Hello guys, this is your friend Naruto Audio Fanfics and we are back with a new fanfic. Which is what if Naruto fell for Hinata from the very beginning? Part 1. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfic. Konoha was celebrating. It was the annual Foundation Festival. A century or so ago during the Warring States era, three of the most powerful clans of the time, the Uchiha, the Senju and the Hyuga, founded the village and established the first milestone towards ending the era of wars. The week-long festival is celebrated by civilians and ninjas alike during the first week of July. While everyone was busy enjoying the festival, a certain someone was busy running amidst the crowd for his hiding place as he was being hunted for his latest pranks. Or one of his latest pranks. As always, he was laughing while running because he knew he won't get caught in hideout number 3. He looked back to see his pursuers. They were good 5 or so yards away. He smirked. Couldn't even catch him, and they were supposed to have some kind of freaky eyes that gave them 360 view, at least that was what the kids at the orphanage said. Or maybe he was just that good at stealth. Or running away. Either way, freaky all-seeing eyes can't catch a 5-year-old brat. As he was taking a turn that would get him closer to his hideout number 3, he saw a mini landmine explode a few feet away from him. He chuckled and increased his speed. This was the reason he was running away in the first place. Well, not exactly. Initially, he was in the crowd to hide from the freaky-eyed police because he knew they would start searching him all around the village the moment the first landmine went off. But the reason they got his trail was completely different one. He stopped himself from thinking about the blasted reason. His was mood way too good to be spoiled by such trivial things. The night before yesterday when he was yet again kicked out of the orphanage, he wandered into the market district, to find someplace good enough to get a decent sleep. But his eyes caught a weapons shop. It was closed like all other shops due to the late hour, and he entered it, hoping to find something interesting. And find something he did. He saw some bundles of modified explosive tags. They were larger than normal and, guess this, they didn't even need chakra to go off. They were designed like landmines. They would go off when sufficient weight was applied on them. The bulb in his head went off and he knew the festival will go even more amazing than he originally planned it to be. He mentally calculated his funds and realized he would have to go on just 2 meals per day for the whole month for 4 bundles of the tags. It will be worth it, was what he had thought at that time, and God knows he hadn't regretted a thing yet. He picked up 4 of the bundles and put in correct amount of money on the counter, taking extra care to ensure that the tags were set at the least power possible. He hadn't joined the academy yet so he couldn't regulate the power and he knew, from experience, that collateral damage was never worth it. He first tried one tag in a place where he wouldn't get caught, and quickly judged how deep he would need to bury them to get the desired effect. By that experiment he knew they needed at least 60 kilograms to go off, so he can be rest assured that children won't be harmed by it, well, at least children who aren't in Akamichi clan. Working quickly, he buried all the tags all over the field, some deeper than others as one bundle was set at more power than other 3. By his estimation, it would take at maximum 3 days for all of them to be set off, or get discovered and diffused by the police. Then, on the 5th day he would go set up the phase 2 of his prank, the phase he was originally going to complete that night but was now postponed 4 more days. Thank heavens he didn't prepare the super glue he was going to paint all the benches with in advance. He didn't have enough time to do it that night nor did he have enough money to get all the supplies again. So far, it's the 2nd day and he still wasn't caught. Well, technically, he wasn't. He had spent most of the first day sleeping in his hideout number 7. He wasn't dumb enough to go back to the orphanage when half of the police force was out for him and have the caretaker hand him over to them. Then first night was spent relishing in his handiwork, the second day was spent hiding from the police, he tends to that a lot, and now second night. It went better than he expected. Honestly, he thought he'd get caught hours before the second night even started. Though, he still would have lasted at least 15 more hours if only that mean old hag didn't out him when he tried to take that one takoyaki, just one, which was clearly stale and on way to dustbin in a few hours. She was giving them to other kids for free anyway. Back to the present, he looked back again and saw only 2 freaky eyes still on his trail. He huffed in annoyance and took a roundabout way to mix into the crowd to avoid giving out the position of his hideout. He took a few more turns and finally entered the alley to the place. Checking once, he saw no presence of his pursuers and slipped into the space between 2 buildings. He caught the pipes and climbed up to the first floor and jumped through the window. As he straightened from his crouch, his bright blue eyes met 2 pale lavender orbs and he froze. It took him more than 2 seconds to move his eyes enough to make out a faint childlike silhouette from the moonlight. He silently moved a couple feet right and switched on the table lamp he kept for convenience. The hideout number 3 was a small abandoned warehouse. According to what he heard, a factory or something was started here by some retired shinobi, but was bankrupted and quickly shut down. Since then, it's abandoned because others areas were being developed and no one wanted to invest their money in the old district. The boy, having stumbled across the warehouse nearly 2 years ago when he was hiding from some bullies, found it to be his safe haven. He knows the warehouse better than he knew his room in the orphanage, and the room was not even a 20th of the warehouse. Over time, he filled it with his prank supplies and some packaged foods, as he did with his other hideouts, and maintained the bare minimum of it. He also paid its electricity bill, though there was only one working bulb in the whole warehouse. Because his bills were in name of Hokage, the police couldn't track it to him. Really, more than half of his monthly pocket money given to him by the Hokage was spent in maintaining his hideouts and prank supplies. Good thing not all of his hideouts required much maintenance. Hideout number 3 was the most expensive one. And the hell it was worth it. The freaky-eyed police could never find him here. Really, they would walk right past it and would never suspect him to be here. He first noticed it when he was, yet again, running away from them like 7 months ago. He usually avoided the warehouse when he was running away so as to not give away one of the best and most stashed hideouts of his. But that day he really had no other place to go and he was forced to take refuge in it. He was more shocked than relieved when he saw his pursuers pass right by the warehouse like it was not even there. He had no idea why that happened, and the same thing happened every time, but he wasn't going to look the gift horse in the mouth. Since then, this was his favorite and most secured warehouse. So, saying that after recognizing the silhouette in his hideout as one of the freaky eyes, he had a minor heart attack will not be an exaggeration. The figure, not even a yard away from him, quickly came closer and put a hand over his mouth to keep him from screaming. It removed the hand after a few seconds as the boy calmed down enough. Once his mind was working properly, he noticed the figure was a small girl, around his own age. She had midnight blue hair that fell just below her shoulder blades and her forehead was covered with bangs. She wore an ivory kimono that was littered with small lavenders from below and on the sleeves, with a pure white obi. It gave her a somewhat regal look. The said look was only intensified by her expression, stoic and stern but still somehow retaining the childlike glow. When he noticed her eyes, he saw curiosity in them, not the sternness he unknowingly expected from the look on her face, or the emotionless gaze he saw in each and every pair of the same eyes he had seen, and not the fear or anger or disgust he was used to seeing in almost everyone. Though now that he was really seeing those eyes, he could see they were not harsh as he was used to. In fact, they were nothing like anyone he had ever seen in the police force. Maybe it was because she was just a kid like him, but then none of the other kids had ever looked at him like that. It reminded him somewhat of Hokage Gigi. He decided he liked a look like that directed at him. The more he looked into those eyes, the less freaky they looked. Honestly, he would almost call them the prettiest eyes he had ever seen. Hi, I am Naruto Uzumaki. Nice to meet you, Naruto started, hoping to break the ice. Do you live here? The girl asked, ignoring to introduce herself. She had a soft yet stern and authoritative voice. No, this is just, my hideout, Naruto answered. Then kicked himself internally for babbling his stupid mouth. What if she rats him out? Are you here often? The girl asked. No, not very often. Only like once a month or two, Naruto answered nervously. Not much else he can say to take it back. I will be taking my leave now. Hinata Hyuga. It was a pleasure to meet you, Uzumaki-san. The girl smiled and bowed slightly to introduce herself. She straightened and spoke before Naruto could respond. I would appreciate if this meeting is never mentioned to anyone else. Good night. Even though her voice was still soft as silk, her tone demanded total obedience. Naruto nodded dumbly and saw her go out the way he came in. She climbed up to the window using a ladder he had fixed below the window for convenience and jumped out of there. His eyes widened when she jumped and he ran after her to catch her before she fell, even though he knew he would not be able to. But when he climbed up the ladder, he just saw her kimono as she turned around the corner and disappeared. Naruto chuckled breathlessly and spent the rest of the night in his favorite hideout. He wasn't caught until next night. He was kept in detention for 10 hours, not that it made the landmines stop exploding. But he was caught within 12 hours of starting his phase 2. People of Konoha were once again piqued. Even civilians could see the unrest in their shinobi. And though most of them didn't know the reason behind it, they can guess. It wasn't that hard, really. Naruto was sitting on the second last desk of his class, smirking and completely ignoring Iruka-sensei's lesson. Even though he couldn't see the result of his latest successful project, the hushed noises coming from outside of school walls were music to his ears. It's fine. I will see them after school. No worries. He knew exactly what was happening. He had seen it happen way too many times. Half of the Hyuga police would be searching for him in all his frequent visiting places, and of course school was not on the upper half of that list. Then they would finally come here and try to arrest him. Try, because first, they had no evidence against him this time, and second, they won't get an arrest warrant without some evidence. But he won't resist much. After all, he does want a reason to get out of this godforsaken lesson. He smirked wider, and Iruka-sensei started feeling a little uneasy. God knows you never ignore your instincts, usually, to leave the immediate vicinity, when he smiles like that. But this time his instincts weren't telling him to run, they were just telling him that something chaotic was gonna happen. So, he continued his lecture, but kept his senses sharp. All of a sudden, Naruto's smirk vanished and he sat straighter, the image of an innocent academy student, which everyone knew was fake. Really? Everyone? Iruka-sensei frowned but continued his lecture like he was never distracted. Just a couple of seconds later, he picked up sounds coming from the hallway. Sounds of boots. Someone was coming. Chaos. Likely. Right on cue, the door opened and in came 4 members of Hyuga police. Even though Naruto looked as confused as anyone else in the room, inside he was snickering, everything was according to the plan. One of them wore dark gray uniform and other three wore an almost black gray, which Naruto knew were levels number 3 and number 2 respectively. Hyuga police displayed rank using their uniforms. The lighter the shade, the more powerful and skilled the policeman. There was one head of the police, the general, who wore all white. Naruto didn't know what other ranks were. So, he just called them levels, with level number 1 all black, rookies. Naruto was proud to admit that he was never caught by a rookie, ever. Even level number 2 caught him rarely, on their lucky days. But, level number 3 knew what they were doing. And even Naruto knew not to mess with anyone on level number 5 or number 6. Good thing they weren't many in numbers, or in streets for that matter. The first Hyuga to enter the classroom stepped forward. He was the leader. According to the uniform and personal experience, he had caught Naruto a couple of times in the past, and looked straight at Naruto. Naruto Uzumaki. Do you know what happened today at the Uchiha compound? The leader asked Naruto emotionlessly, but someone who knew Hyugas really well, Naruto, could hear the masked irritation in his voice. So, he obediently answered, no, why? What happened? He frowned in confusion, knowing he would only be increasing his irritation. This was how every conversation between Naruto and any Hyuga started whenever they came after him. They would ask him if he knew what happened to the unfortunate, not always, place that was the victim of his latest prank, and he would give the same answer. Word to word. Every damn time. Where were you last night? The leader asked him. At Ichiraku's, he answered truthfully. By now he was laughing so much in his head that his eyes were giving him away. But his expression didn't change much. He had too much practice for that, and they wouldn't arrest him just by saying, your eyes show smugness. That means you are the culprit. That wouldn't count for evidence. When leader asked further, knowing pretty well the boy was just playing them. Around 8:30, for almost 1 hour, Naruto answered truthfully. And after that, leader asked further. Then I went for a stroll in the park and then home, Naruto responded, omitting the quick and very slight, very slight, detour he took between the two activities. Of course, the said detour was to the Uchiha district, or at least its outskirts, as the idiots had most of the water supplies on the outskirts of the district, but no one needed to know that. You went straight to your home after your stroll, right? Leader asked in a tone that practically spelled he was not buying it one bit. Well, he sure learns from experience. Idiot believed him the first 2 times he was on Naruto's trail. Naruto shrugged internally, and nodded his head as innocently as he dared. Not that they could arrest him on the count of facial expressions. I'm sorry, but does this discussion have to happen here? Iruka intervened before the Hyuga leader could continue his interrogation. His students were getting more interested than they ever are inside the classroom. I apologize for intruding, sensei. We will try to wrap it up as soon as we could, leader said sincerely to Iruka sensei and faced Naruto again. Get up, Uzumaki, leader smirked, and that led Naruto to instantly go through last night thoroughly to remember if he left any trails, because there sure as hell wasn't any evidence. You are under arrest. The leader's giddiness could be felt by everyone in the room, even though his face never gave a thing away. On what charges? Naruto asked, raising an eyebrow. Vandalizing public property and breaking and entering private property, leader responded smugly. And what did I, pray tell, vandalize? Naruto asked in the same tone. And frolicking about on the borders of private property was not breaking and entering. Uchiha water supplies, leader replied confidently. Where is the evidence? Naruto asked patiently, confident that there was none. You were seen around the Uchiha grounds by our patrols at night, leader told him, smirking. And that's your evidence? There were a lot of people there last night, Naruto said, bored. There was even a patrol squad of yours, as you said. How do I know you are not framing me? It won't be the first time, either. It was a subtle jab, and he knew no one in the classroom except the police would pick it up. He set up his prank while there was a Hyuga police squad patrolling at the scene. And all the evidence they could gather against him was of his presence. 3 Hyuga's eye twitched almost unnoticeably. The leader was way too experienced with Naruto to react to his jabs anymore, at least until they are subtle. So, you admit you were there? Leader trapped him happily, well, as happy as a stuck-up Hyuga can ever be, ignoring anything else he said. Yeah, I was. I just told you I was strolling in the park last night after dinner. Uchiha compound kinda comes along the route from there to home. Go check a map, Naruto commented offhandedly. Yes, the longer route. And last time I checked, you were known to take shortcuts for everything, leader bit out arrogantly. That's not the case when I am going home, pal. In case you haven't noticed, I'm not there until the last moment possible, Naruto told the leader airily, ignoring the reason behind the fact. Doesn't matter. I have your arrest warrant and you are coming with us now, leader almost growled. Naruto really could take their emotions out of the box like no other. Fine. But show me the warrant first. Naruto stood up from his seat, walked up to the Hyuga squad and held out his hand. After all, he does want to get out of this stuffy classroom. From a distance the sight would have been amusing. 4 fully grown men losing their minds, not that it was that apparent, mind you, because of a kid that didn't reach even up to their waist who was still maintaining his cool, apparently. He checked the warrant carefully, though this time he would have gone with them even if it was fake. The original documents by the Hyuga police had 3 stamps, each one exactly on top of other. It was really hard to see due to finesse of the higher-ups, but thankfully he had better senses, thus, eyes, than average. Even Naruto discovered it by accident. He was almost 6 at the time and had recently been given a small rundown apartment by Gigi when a squad of Hyuga police broke into and tried to arrest him. It was one of the rare times when he really was falsely accused. He tried to resist, but then an Anbu suddenly appeared from nowhere in his defense. He asked for the arrest warrant and examined it. Naruto thought he saw something red flashing from inside the Anbu's mask, but he chalked it up as his imagination. The Anbu declared the warrant to be fake. The squad left him without much convincing from the Anbu and Naruto followed them. They threw the fake warrant in a garbage bin and went back to the tower. Naruto found it and kept it for future reference. It took Naruto more than 3 months to plan a prank big enough to get an original arrest warrant for him and figure out a way to differentiate between real and fake. Yup, it's real, Naruto said, handing the warrant back to the leader. Let's go, then, get this over with, and went out of the classroom door, both hands behind his head, Hyuga squad trailing behind him. Naruto sat on a chair too big for him, head resting sideways on one folded hand on the table, tapping the fingers of his other hand to kill time. If he knew he would be so bored out here today or it would take so long today, he would have pranked the Uchihas some other day. Apparently, the big boss or something was coming for inspection. And the bastards just have to bring him to the headquarters. Couldn't they have taken him to any of the other towers? For God's sake, there are 4 more. But no, they just have to bring him to the headquarters when they couldn't even spare a trained interrogator for him. They sent some level number 2 or number 3 idiot to interrogate him. It was like toying with a stupid 10-year-old, never mind if he himself is just 7.5. He was almost offended. The last 3 times he actually was interrogated, that was by someone of level number 4. Well, at least he got to see some Uchihas before the school ended. And boy, was that hilarious. Pink really was a complimentary color for them. And especially with that pissed expression. He couldn't wait to wander around the district as soon as he gets out. If a few pink heads were this great, imagine a whole crowd of them. And get this, he even saw 2 or 3 Anbu in the shadows with pink hair. Not so much for stealth, but damn if it didn't make them at least look great, so great. God, even thinking about it make him giggle so much. Fortunately, he was out of that one-way mirror room, so he knew no one was watching him. At least not without cheating by using their freaky eyes. Who knows, they may even charge him rightfully, though, if they saw him like this. If they can make an arrest warrant for him just for being in the vicinity of crime, hours before it even happened, mind you, they can do anything. Oh, that reminded him Sasuke Tem skipped school today. Hey, got him, too. Speaking of school, if his estimations are correct, lunch break would be over by now, and his class would be going over target practice by now. Man, he didn't mean to miss that. He thought he would be back by lunch break and then would enjoy target practice and taijutsu. But now he missed target practice and who knows when the idiots will send him back. Gah, I'm so bored. And the lock of the door clicked open. Hoping for some divine intervention, but knowing it is just some other stinking Hyuga, he turned his head toward the door. His eyes fell on the person standing on the door almost 3 feet lower than where they were supposed to. A flash of recognition went through him when he saw a girl his own age with those pretty eyes that he saw more than 2 years ago. He grinned widely. She turned around to close the door and subtly pushed a finger to his lips, wanting to silence him before he could even say a hello. He got the message and his grin dropped, genuine confusion marring his face. She turned and made her way to him, and stopped a foot away from him. He turned his stool toward her and tilted his head, wanting an explanation for keeping quiet. She just bowed slightly to him and re-introduced herself. Hello, my name is Hinata Hyuga. Naruto Uzumaki. It came out more of a question. Did she not remember him? He sure does. Somehow, it wasn't so surprising or unexpected, but it hurt all the same. Pleasure to meet you, Uzumaki-san. I heard you were waiting here for the paperwork to be done so you can go, she politely inquired in the same soft voice he still remembered. Yeah, something about His Majesty stopping by or whatever, he said with an eye roll, annoyance clear on his face. His Majesty. Her eyes sparkled with amusement though her face was as stoic as ever. Well, the way they went all uptight, even more so than usual, and red carpeting the whole place, and have you seen the rookies? They look like they are on pins and needles, you know. It's like a king or something is descending upon the poor headquarter, he explained, exaggerating what he saw before in the corridors. There wasn't a red carpet, but it wasn't like one couldn't imagine it with the way everyone was behaving. Her lips quirked up just a tiny bit and he wondered what it would take to make her laugh out loud. Well, challenge accepted. That's certainly an unusual way to address father, she said, and both her eyebrows rose just a bit. Well, it wouldn't be once I get out of this torture chamber, she arched an eyebrow at this. Wait, father? He asked once the complete sentence registered in his mind. Yes. His Majesty, as you put it, is my father, she answered with a nod. Whoa. So, are you like a princess or something? He asked in awe, eyes wide with childlike sparkle. Or something, maybe. I am the heiress to the clan, she said, and this time her amusement did leak into her words. Awesome. I never knew we had a princess in our village, you know. I can't wait till I tell everyone I met you. They will be so jealous, Naruto cackled somewhat deviously. She waited for a moment for him to stop and was about to burst his bubble of her not being a princess, when he cut her off with his own question, why did you come here for anyway? I doubt it's just to talk to me and help me survive through this boredom. That reminded her, You are correct. I came here to tell you that you are free to go and all the paperwork about you being falsely charged is done. Oh, really? Why didn't you say so sooner? He jumped off the stool and hurriedly clasped his shoes which he had previously loosened to relax. It's almost time for the taijutsu classes, you know. I already missed the target practice, too. He darted toward the door and she stepped aside to make way for him. I didn't know you were in the ninja academy. He stopped a few feet from the door and turned to her. Oh yeah, I have been in the academy for almost 2 years now. I'm gonna become the strongest ninja and the next Hokage. You better watch out, princess. He put both his hands on his hips and gave the biggest grin to her. He expected her to laugh or snort at him like others. She did forget him after all, but she just said, "Good luck for your dreams," then, Uzumaki-san. He was stunned for a moment but then grinned at her, smaller and softer than before. Oh, I just remembered. Can I ask you something personal? Hinata asked suddenly. Yeah, sure, shoot. He just shrugged. Are you, by any chance, from the Uzumaki clan? She asked curiously. Uzumaki clan. He blinked stupidly. It's almost extinct now, but there are a few direct descendants of the clan alive, she told him. Oh, I don't know. Sorry. He answered her absently, his mind still trying to wrap around what she just told him. Forget academy. He is going to the Hokage Tower the moment he is out of this stinking HQ. Gigi have some answers to give. He will be late for taijutsu anyway. Okay. Sorry, I gotta go, he said quickly and hurried to open the door, not looking back if princess have anything else to say. As the door opened, he remembered something and turned back toward her, one hand still on the knob. Something told him not to ask it directly. Have we met before, princess? The amusement was back in her eyes. I don't know. Were you really falsely charged? It took him a second to understand, and when he did, he just smiled broadly, giving his foxy grin as others call it, and went out with a cheery, "See ya." They both got their answers regardless. Hiruzen Sarutobi sat in his office, overlooking his village bustling with activity, puffing on his pipe deeply. He could see more than a few pink heads today among his people. More in his Anbu. Hyuga police appeared to be more agitated today, and he could only guess why. Even though it would be pretty spot-on guess. A nagging voice in the back of his mind was consistently reminding him of all the paperwork waiting for his judgment behind his chair, major reason he had a high back chair. And he was consistently ignoring that voice in favor of the free entertainment that was generously being provided by Hyuga police. He could swear they react more intensely every time he plays another large-scale prank. After a few minutes they quieted down and Sarutobi wondered where they finally found him. Because they always do. Even if it takes them days. The current record is for 3 days 74 hours to be exact. And he isn't even 8 yet. He is so proud. He dragged on his pipe until it needed a refill and then turned back to complete at least 2 piles of the paperwork before lunchtime, which was in little more than 1 hour. He managed to disintegrate 4 piles of paperwork, after 2 more smoke breaks, not including the lunchtime in which he found out the day's prank in the reports. It was hilarious on his opinion, by the time he felt him coming towards his office. He looked at his clock. 15 minutes till academy is over for the day. Though he doubted the kid even bothered to go to school today. He took out his tobacco pipe, refilled it and lit it as he pondered the reason behind his visit. He usually stayed away from the Hokage Tower during the days of his large-scale pranks. But not before long, the boy was standing outside his door. He took a drag and raised his eyebrows as the door did not suddenly burst open as it usually did. Naruto was hesitating. That's a first. Though it only lasted for 2 seconds. The door opened, slowly, That's another first, and in came Naruto with a conflicted look. The door closed but he didn't say anything. Hello, Naruto-kun, third Hokage greeted the boy politely and smiled before puffing his pipe again. Hey, Gigi, Naruto nodded absent-mindedly but genuinely anyway. He looked as if he was debating something with himself. Hiruzen gave him some time to settle and decide what to say, but when he didn't, Hiruzen asked, "How are you doing, Naruto-kun?" Fine. I wanted to ask you something, Gigi, he said nervously, fidgeting with his hands. Sure. What do you want to know? Hiruzen encouraged him. Is there an Uzumaki clan, Gigi? He asked directly. He never did like beating around the bush. Hiruzen stiffened a bit but didn't let his unease show on his face. He just took another drag of his pipe. How did you know about the Uzumaki clan, Naruto-kun? So, there is an Uzumaki clan, Naruto asked with wide, curious eyes. Not anymore, Naruto-kun. There used to be an Uzumaki clan. But it was slaughtered during the Second Shinobi World War. Now there are just some survivors scattered in the winds, the third told him gently. Naruto's eyes went to the floor and he muttered a small, "Oh. Who told you about it, Naruto-kun?" He asked the boy again. "Oh, it was just a friend, Gigi. Asked me if I really do belong to it," Naruto explained airily. Do I? Though he asked that in the same tone, they both knew he was very much serious. Sarutobi contemplated for a few moments if it would be safe to tell him about his parents or not. But he decided it lying would be worse. Yes, you do. He did wonder who this friend was though. So, my parents were Uzumaki, too. His wide eyes only held curiosity and a little bit sadness, but not betrayal or anything like that the third feared. He expected Naruto to lash out in rightful anger at keeping his parents' identity from him, which he still doesn't know, since he had frequently asked him about them in the past. Well, one of them was, Hiruzen answered vaguely. Naruto's eyes dimmed a little but his enthusiasm was blinding nonetheless. Oh, so, what's special about Uzumakis anyway, Are they strong? Do they have magic eyes like the Uchiha or freaky eyes like the Hyuga? I hope they were not as stuck up as them though. Or do they eat like Akamichi? Or maybe they are pranksters like me. Wait Naruto-kun, slow down. You are comparing them with other clans of our village. They were a different clan, with different abilities. No magic eyes, or anything. And no, they were not known for being pranksters, Sarutobi cringed. God knows he does not need any motivation for pranks. Though I do believe a majority of them were proficient in seals. They were also known for having exceptionally large and strong chakra reserves and longevity. Awesome. So, my parents were seal masters. Or parent, or whatever, Naruto asked and shrugged a bit forcibly at the end. They were pretty good in sealing arts, Sarutobi told him. I am so becoming the next best seal master, Naruto claimed dreamily but determinedly. Hiruzen let out a breathy laugh and chastised him playfully. I thought you wanted to become the next best Hokage, Naruto-kun. Now you hear about some seals and I am forgotten already. I am hurt. No, Gigi, Naruto waved his hands reassuringly in the air, still jumping in excitement. I am still gonna become a Hokage. I will become a seal master as well as the Hokage. I will be so great, Can you imagine it, Gigi? I will be the greatest shinobi there is. Everyone will love me so much, and Naruto went into his own world of greatness. Hiruzen just sat there with an affectionate smile and occasionally chuckling at his student's godson's proclamations. Soon he came back to earth and remembered he doesn't know a thing about seals. Oh, I almost forgot. How will I learn about seals, Gigi? We were not told about anything like that in the academy. He scratched his head sheepishly. not sure if he was correct. Should have listened to Iruka-sensei in the class. I do believe seals are not in the academy curriculum. And there are not many seal masters, too. Not even in Konoha, Hiruzen thought out loud. The only seal master he knew about was Jiraiya. And he was still on a long-term mission. Others like himself and Kakashi only knew enough about it. But then he saw Naruto's expression drop and his eyes went to his shuffling shoes. He retracted his words a bit, but there are some books on Uzumaki clan and seals in the library, if I am right. Maybe they can help you until our residential seal user is back in the village. And just like that, Naruto was back to all rainbows and sunshine, smiles and laughs, alright. He fisted a hand in the air and, library, here I come. Just as he turned around, Hiruzen panicked and stopped him. Wait, Naruto-kun. He turned around with a large grin. Yeah, Gigi. You can't just go and start learning or practicing seals, Naruto-kun, Hiruzen told him, and Naruto frowned, confused. It requires a very good chakra control. How much have you learned in academy? We are at the leaf exercise, I think. Why? Is it not good enough? Naruto said, squinty-eyed. No, it's not. You have barely started it yet. When you are good enough at transformation jutsu, come to me and I will give you some chakra control exercises. Only when, and I repeat only when, you perfect them will you try out any seals. Understood, Naruto-kun. But Gigi, Naruto whined, we will start learning transformation jutsu after 4 months. 4. It will take me so much time to perfect it, you know. I can't wait for so long. What will I do till then? Till then you can read about the Uzumaki clan and learn the theory part, only theory part, of the seals. There's plenty of that there. Did I mention you must learn calligraphy before even thinking about seals? Hiruzen asked in a much too innocent voice. Calligraphy. Isn't that writing or something? Naruto asked, and the whined again, seeing Sarutobi's nod. Ah. You didn't tell me seals were all about reading and writing. Oh, so I guess you wouldn't want to become a seal master if there's so much study to do, Hiruzen cocked an eyebrow. No way. I'm still gonna become the best Hokage and seal master. You just wait and see, you geezer, Naruto stated loudly and pointed a finger at the third. Alright, then, Naruto-kun. How about this? Come here in a few weeks and I'll have a scroll with chakra control exercises for you that will help you in seals. Until then, you can go to library and read about the Uzumaki clan and its techniques, third Hokage offered. Yeah, I can do that, Gigi. 2 weeks, then, Naruto asked to confirm. 2 weeks, Naruto-kun, Hiruzen reassured the boy with a smile and a nod. Alright. Naruto jumped up with a fist in the air. I'm off to the library. And he went to the door. Naruto looked back at Hiruzen, to say, see you soon, as he always did, but was interrupted by Hiruzen before he even opened his mouth. Naruto-kun, are you not upset that I did not tell you about it sooner? You did used to ask about them frequently. Naruto stopped and turned fully toward the Hokage. He stood quietly for a second or two and answered honestly, well, no, not much. He dropped his head and started kicking the back of his feet on the ground softly. I had known you knew their identities for years. I figured you must have had a pretty good reason for that, you know. Naruto looked up straight into the eyes of the Hokage, and Sarutobi saw the unconcealed request to confirm his assumptions there. Yes, Naruto-kun, I do have a good reason for that. And I apologize for hiding it from you. I'm sure you will know when the time comes. But what do you mean, you had known? Naruto hesitated but answered in a small voice, you used to say that they were good people and shinobi when I used to ask you about them. I like to believe they weren't just empty words. Sarutobi smiled lovingly at the child before him. They weren't, Naruto-kun. Naruto grinned like his usual way and gave a thumbs up. Thanks, Gigi. And with that he bolted out of the room shouting, see you next time, old man. Just like he always did. Good to know some things never change. Sarutobi smiled happily at the open door and made a mental note to make a scroll for chakra control exercises as soon as he could. Naruto knew what was going to happen before he even entered the building. He had visited the Konoha library twice before and he didn't expect a welcome any different now than before. But it couldn't hurt to try again, right? So, he sucked it up and entered the open doors and walked inside, mentally preparing himself for the words he knew would come the moment he would enter the vision of the librarian. And what do you want in here, brat? Planning another prank so soon? The librarian's voice stopped him just as he expected. No, I just wanted to read a few books, you know, Naruto answered timidly, hoping she would let him go this time, now that he actually has a good reason. Even he could admit, exploring the playground, and chasing a cat that entered this building, were some lousy excuses. Now that he thought about it, wasn't this the actual reason to come to the library? He should have used it before when he wanted to set up his prank in here. Yeah, right. So, you finally realized this is a place to study. The librarian sneered at him. Yes. So, if I could just, Naruto said and started to walk inside from his place beside the desk. But a long steel scale right in front of his face stopped him. You are not allowed here. She had leaned over the table and was now scowling disgustedly at him. Go, scram, she said with a wave of her free hand. Naruto made a face at that. And why am I not? Old man third have given me permission to come here. Hokage-sama has given everyone permission to come here. It is up to me to decide who is actually allowed to enter. You are not, she told him peskily. And why not? He asked in the same tone. Because I don't want my library to be another one of your ground zero, she piped. I am not planning a prank, you know. I promise. I really just wanted some books, Naruto pressed desperately. Oh, yeah, I am not giving you any books just so you can play with them, or ruin them, or tear them, or whatever it is you wanted to do with them, she snapped sharply. I am just going to read them, nothing else, Naruto insisted. He just received a disgusting glare in return. I said no, she said in a steely voice, ending the squabble. Now, shoo. Naruto stood there firmly for a few seconds, before fisting his hands and darting out of the open doors into the streets of village. He walked aimlessly in the streets, fuming and thinking about any other way to enter the library, or break into it if there's no other way. Ignoring all the looks being sent toward him from the villagers was almost second nature to him, now. He could almost pretend there weren't any when he was lost in his thoughts like this. It helped a lot. He stopped abruptly when suddenly a detail from his previous talk with the Hokage popped into his mind. He grinned widely and a couple of villagers that were going to pass by him shivered and decided to wait ahead of him in a stall for a few seconds. His eyes refocused and he saw that he was in the clothing lane of the shopping district. He looked at the general direction in front of him and flew right out of the district. He knew what he was going to do. The people waiting because of him released a smug and relieved sigh and went on their merry way, ignoring those few who were sprawled on the floor due to the little demon's flight. They should have known better. In a few minutes Naruto was standing outside the academy gates. He entered the building and saw it was half an hour past the time when classes are supposed to be over. By now there would only be a few teachers in the staff room and the kids for detention, which meant none since it would be a fitful day when anyone other than himself would be in detention. Well, sometimes there are Kiba, Shikamaru and Choji with me, too. Anyways, That meant the person he came here for should be here, too. He made his way to his class and grinned when he saw the open door. He ran inside and saw Iruka-sensei look up from his desk. Naruto? He asked, a bit surprised to see the blonde at academy at this hour. Naruto clapped his hands in front of him, and made the most innocent puppy face he could manage. Hey, Iruka-sensei, can you teach me the transformation jutsu a bit early? Iruka sat behind his desk, tired and wondered how he got roped into this unfortunate position. Naruto stood a few feet in front of him, looking like he would drop dead any minute. He was exhausted and bedraggled. Stubbornly, he shook himself and then straightened himself, his hands forming the dog seal, followed by boar and then ram. White smoke appeared with a poof, and in Naruto's place stood Iruka. At least, it was supposed to be Iruka. This time Naruto only managed to get the clothes correct. It was worse than his last attempt. And would be slightly better than his next attempt. The boy was ready to pass out for 24 hours straight. Iruka would prefer if he does. He really doesn't want to see his image getting any more abused. He walked up to Naruto and held his shoulders to stop him from trying again. That's enough for today, Naruto. Let's have some ramen and then you can rest for the night. No, Iruka-sensei, I can still go on, Naruto protested faintly, but no less determinedly, and tried to shake of the hands from his shoulders. All he managed was to fall on his butt weakly. That's enough, Naruto. I am going. Come, we'll continue tomorrow, Iruka said sternly and offered his hand to Naruto, who looked he was still going to protest. Iruka gave him a warning look and Naruto thought better and took his hand. It took the two of them much longer than usual to reach the Ichiraku's ramen stand due to Naruto's worn-out state. Tsuki gave them their usual without a word. Naruto's energy came back just a little bit. He had come to Iruka 4 days ago abruptly and asked to him to teach him the transformation jutsu early. Iruka refused, but Naruto pestered him for 3 hours straight before he caved in. But not before making a deal that no one will know about it until there are at least 2 students in his class who had mastered it. Naruto looked hurt by it and Iruka quickly explained that it is because if people saw it, they would take it the wrong way and accuse him of favoritism. While it wouldn't bother him personally, it could result in him being transferred to another class. Naruto understood, and even though he clearly wasn't happy with it, he agreed. So, for 4 days they have been meeting at the academy at 5 in evening, and hour after it is completely deserted. Naruto practices until he is ready to pass out while Iruka give him tips and pointers to improve. The first 2 days were the hardest. But after that Naruto started getting the hang of it and Iruka only had to point out the mistakes. He can do clothes nicely by now and hands and legs decently. Face is still very hard to recognize. By the progress Naruto had shown already, Iruka would guess it would be at least a week more till he gets it decent as a whole and 3 till he perfects it. Knowing him, Naruto would manage to get it down earlier than Iruka's expectations. Or he would just take so long that Iruka would rather not think about it, lest he jinx it. Sparing a smiling glance at Naruto, and another nervous one at the pile of bowls already forming beside him, Iruka finished his second bowl and called for his last one, wishing Naruto would learn the jutsu fast. His wallet was hurting. Once he gets an acceptable transformation down, Naruto wouldn't need him for supervision anymore. After they finished, Naruto went on the way to his apartment and Iruka reminded him to go straight to bed or else. Iruka stood looking at Naruto's fading silhouette for some time before making way to his own home. For a while he wondered what was so important that Naruto was pushing himself so much to learn the jutsu so fast. He was always stubborn and determined like this, but this time it felt like he had a genuine reason to learn the jutsu other than just showing off, which, harsh as it might sound, was true more often than not. Meh, he wasn't sure if he wanted to know, and anyway, if Naruto wanted him to know, then he would know even if he didn't want to. Naruto learned the jutsu in 5 more days and perfected it in 10 more after that. He showed it off in the school after Sasuke mastered it in 2 weeks. Iruka could just sigh. Naruto smirked as he entered the building and passed by the desk where the librarian was sitting. She looked up once at him and he tensed slightly but didn't give any hint of stopping. After half a second, she looked down and continued whatever it was she was doing. How convenient that she was just a civilian. Naruto continued on and stopped when he was out of her sight. He looked around himself in awe, seeing so many books in one place for the first time. He looked faintly green when he thought about how he was going to find the book he wanted among so many. Gulping, he went to one end of the library and started flipping through the titles in the first aisle. By the time he was at the middle, he realized that the books were arranged alphabetically. His relief was almost palpable. He hurried to the end of the aisle. The titles were at I's. He noticed there were many books with the same name, Ika Ika, though they had different colored covers. He just shrugged and went down the next aisle, straight to the end. It ended at Q's. Naruto never imagined there were so many words that started with Q. At next aisle, he hovered over all the books at the front and quickly went to the U's. None of the books had Uzumaki anywhere in their titles. Naruto frowned and checked them all again. There wasn't one book with Uzumaki written on them. He huffed and folded his hands, leaning on the shelf behind him. Does this mean he really would have to go through each and every book? Even the thought was making him faint. But he couldn't think of anything else. And he was sure there is at least one book on Uzumaki clan in the library. Gigi never really lies to him, and this kind of joke was cruel for anyone, anyways. He spent a good 5 minutes standing there, thinking of reasons to avoid checking all the books. He only managed to waste 4 minutes and 50 seconds. It was clear to him in 10 seconds that there were none. With a resigned sigh, he got up and went through the aisles again. He was starting the second aisle, and his mind was feeling like jelly when he remembered that there were many more aisles in the library than these 3. He turned around and entered the 4th one and groaned when he saw some book whose name was staring with a. What the hell is wrong with this place? With an irritated pout, he walked out of the aisle and paced down the rows, checking a book in each one. After every few rows, a would reappear again. It was irregular. Sometimes it was just after 1 row, sometimes 2, and sometimes even 4 or 5. He wanted to shout and pull his hair with frustration, but one of the few things he knew about libraries was that you should be silent like a statue in there. He looked up and fisted his hands to refrain himself, taking a deep breath, and saw a plate bolted on the top of a shelf between 2 aisles. There was something written on it, so Naruto backed up a bit till he could read it properly. Philosophy, psychology was written there. He frowned in confusion, walked up to the next shelf. It, too, had a similar plate. Philosophy, ethics and morals. Very slowly Naruto realized that these were the categories. Once again, he ran to the first shelf and read literature on it. Happy to have figured it out, he skipped down the rows again, this time reading all the headings. He was almost at the end of the library. There were only 4 more rows left, and he was getting antsy when he finally saw the one labeled General Ninja Clans. He resisted the urge to jump and shout and darted down towards the end, quickly finding a book named The Uzumaki Clan Compilation. This time he couldn't resist and let out a small, yes, which came out like a squeak because trying to be quiet. Swiftly, he took it out and went to the nearest table and sat down. He opened it excitedly and at first, he just stared at it giddily, and then started reading it. It took Naruto more than an hour to read the first half page and to realize, and 1.5 more to read the other half and to admit, that he doesn't know to read. He can read small, basic, daily use words and some big words with some effort, but he wasn't the best in reading. And this book looked like it was full of big, complicated and difficult words that he had heard the higher-ups in Hyuga police use, at least those which he can read. Should have listened to Iruka-sensei in the class. He shut the book in frustration and got up to leave with a scowl on his face. Just as he was about to pass by the desk, the librarian spoke and stopped him. "Excuse me, mister." Naruto stood still for a moment, not actually believing the old hag can be so polite, especially to him, before he remembered that he was still in his transformation impersonating Iruka-sensei. So, he turned around and asked innocently, "Yes. I think you forgot to return the book you were reading," she told him politely. It took him a few seconds to understand what she was saying. She sounded so sweet it was unbelievable. Then he remembered that you are supposed to keep the books back in their places after you read them. "Oh, yes. I apologize, I was in a hurry. It slipped my mind. I will do it now," Naruto said, trying hard not to let out his verbal tic, and bowed suddenly when he remembered Iruka-sensei doing it when he apologizes. He went back to his table, picked up the book and entered the aisle in which it was kept. He quickly found its place and put it back in there. He felt a pang of jealousy when he saw a book the Uchiha clan right next to the Uzumaki book. There were easily 6 or 7 volumes of it, all as thick as the single Uzumaki one. Now curious, he looked at other books and read their names. On the other side, there was one named the Wagarashi family and next to it, the Wasabi family. Beside that were 3 of the Yamanaka clan. After that were some more. So, Naruto went backwards and looked at other clans, reading those he could: Tsushigumo, Shirogane, Shimura, Shin, Senju, Sarutobi, Ryu, Utsutsuki, Nara, Kurama. It looked like the clans who were living in the village had more than 2 volumes to them. Makes sense. Does that mean Uzumaki clan did not live in Konoha? Naruto walked out of the library thoughtfully and thoughtlessly and into a nearby alleyway. He became aware only when he undid the transformation jutsu. He knew where he was going now. With renewed determination, he made his way out of the alleyway and towards Iruka-sensei's house. He didn't notice it was almost dinner time until his stomach grumbled when Iruka-sensei opened his door and smell of shrimp ramen filled his lungs. It took Naruto 2 whole months to learn to read excellently. By that time, his vocabulary was better than most 15 years olds, not that he actually made use of it anywhere. He went to the library again, transformed as Iruka-sensei, after only 10 or so days of his reading extra classes. That time he finished the first page in just over half an hour. 1 week later he had completed the whole book. 2 days later he came again and read the whole book second time. It took him 4 days this time. He was right. Uzumaki clan was not from Konoha. It was the prominent clan in Uzushiogakure in the land of whirlpools. As Jiji told him, they were known for their sealing prowess and longevity. So much so that they were all killed in the Second Shinobi World War for that. Really, who the hell kills a whole village just because it is full of super awesome badass ninja? It's so stupid. They could just have made them allies and won the war. Idiots. Anyways, they were also known for having red hair. That means one of them was a redhead while other was blonde. He thought that maybe his father was Uzumaki, since he himself was named Uzumaki, but he had a weird feeling that it wasn't so. The village was also called the Village of Longevity, because of Uzumaki clan. It had many high-rise buildings and bridges over the river that flowed through it, before its destruction, and was covered by steep hills. The Uzumaki clan was also closely related with the Senju clan for generations. Their most recent relation being the wedlock between the first Hokage and Mito Uzumaki. There wasn't much else in the book about it, some accomplished shinobi from Uzumaki clan, descriptions of places in Uzushiogakure, some of their formidable seals and their exploits and other historic things. The second time he read it, he noticed Mito Uzumaki wasn't in the list of Uzumaki clan's noted shinobi. This spiked his curiosity. Surely the one who good enough to be married to the first Hokage would be good enough to be included in notable shinobi of Uzumaki clan, too. For that, he picked out another book from the same shelf, the Senju clan, distinguished members. He now actually listened to some of Iruka sensei's boring lectures and remembered other historic people other than the fourth Hokage. The book was a bit thinner than the Uzumaki clan book, but, hey, it included only the notable shinobis of Senju clan. The one listing their jutsu prowess was actually double than this one. There was only one line written below the name Mito Uzumaki Senju, wife of the first Hokage, Hashirama Senju. There were 25 whole pages about Hashirama Senju. If Naruto wasn't barely 8-year-old, he would have found it suspicious. As it was, he just shrugged and forgot. It was after that second time that he went back to Gigi to ask for that scroll of chakra control exercises. He was glad he waited till then, because when he started studying it, he was sure he wouldn't have been able to do at least 2 of those 7 exercises, or at least not very easily, because he didn't think he knew the meaning of 1/3 of those words 1 month back. He perfected those exercises within 4 months, 1 week before his birthday. That week was spent planning a big prank for the Kyuubi festival, especially because he didn't do anything during the Foundation festival this time. The door banged loudly on the wall as the blonde ball of sunshine and headaches entered Sarutobi's office, increasing his already present headache tenfold just by the sheer volume of, "Hey, Gigi." Paperwork and Naruto sure makes up for all the hangovers he evaded after giving up drinking when he passed on the hat to another blonde ball of sunshine and fewer headaches. "Hello, Naruto-kun," he said, smiling through his pounding head. "It's been long since you have come to meet me. I see you have been busy." Because busy he was. The piles of paperwork caused by his last prank during the Kyuubi festival more than made up for all the relief he had for almost 6 months when he had concentrated on the Uzumaki clan and chakra control exercises. It's only been 1 week since the festival. Honestly, Sarutobi was a bit scared. It usually took much longer to unravel all that Naruto does in pranks this big. Seriously, how did he even set up a plan, let alone played it for a whole day when he was already banned from all the festivals since he was 5? He even has an apprehend at sight order on him after all the ruckus he caused to the Uchiha clan months back. First civilian to get the honor. He doesn't even want to think what would happen when he graduates. The Hokage handles the ninjas, after all. Meh. I'll just let the Anbu deal with him. He would definitely meet their mission standards by then. But the Hyuga police has never been so desperate. No one even knows what the extent of his prank is. Some people got painted, some got itched, some were laughing uncontrollably, some sneezing, some were found unconscious under benches. How did they get there anyway? Some people got a bad stomach, some shoes disappeared, and there were some small craters here and there. This much is reported. God knows what else happened. They don't even how much of that is directly because of Naruto. If any of that even is. Hey, it's possible. He wasn't seen even once in the festival, he wasn't seen anywhere else either, but that's not the point. He was apprehended next day in front of the academy, and was released after 3 hours without any repercussions. He knows exactly how to play the police. Yeah, nearly 4 months. I almost missed you. Naruto laughed while scratching his head. His happiness was so contagious third Hokage had to at least chuckle, his headache very gradually easing. Almost. Well, yeah, I have been busy, who knows that better than me, okay, maybe the Hyuga police and me, with all those chakra control exercises you gave me, and reading stuff in the library and academy and training and pranking, you know what not. I didn't really think about anything else much. So, what brings you to this old coot today? The Hokage asked curiously. I wanted to ask you if it's okay for me to start studying seals now, you know. You said first I had to master those chakra control exercises. I have mastered them, all of them, and I have mastered the transformation jutsu and I have read everything on Uzumaki clan 3 times. There's only one book after all. Can I please start seals now? Please. You completed all those exercises? Sarutobi asked, and Naruto nodded vigorously. Then you wouldn't mind showing them to me, would you? Sarutobi absolutely believed in Naruto, the kid never lied unless it was for his pranks, but he wanted to see how good he was. He did train alone after all. Of course not. Tell me what you wanna see, Naruto yelled confidently. Let's go with the leaf sticking exercise first, Sarutobi told Naruto. Really? That's so boring. Even other academy students can do that, you know, Naruto whined but sat down in a comfortable position nonetheless. He sat there for a second and then remembered, oh, I don't have a leaf, Gigi, he said, smiling sheepishly. Don't worry. Here, Hiruzen beckoned him to come closer and tore a small piece of paper for him, about the size of his palm. He gave it to Naruto to use it as a substitute for a leaf. Taking it, Naruto once again sat down cross-legged on the floor. He raised his head upward, looking at the ceiling, and then kept the paper on his forehead. His eyes closed and 3 seconds later his head came down, facing in front of him. The paper didn't fall off. A few seconds later he opened his eyes and grinned smugly. He sat there like that for a whole minute before Sarutobi told him to stop. Okay. Naruto-kun, you did good, Naruto beamed at the praise. Now, I think you should show me the shuriken flying exercise. Hiruzen threw a shuriken at him, slow enough that he could catch it without injuring himself. Naruto caught it and kept it on his palm horizontally. After about 5 seconds, he suddenly flipped his hand down and the shuriken fell down, an inch. Then it hovered just there, moving the way Naruto's hand did but staying an inch away from it always. Naruto was grinning widely the whole time. That's impressive, Naruto-kun, but that's not how it's done. Though I suppose it satisfies the point either way. Yeah, I know. I just like to do it like this. It's so cool, isn't it? Naruto's blinding smile could really rival the sun. I can show you the other way, too, if you want. Not giving the Hokage the chance to say anything, he squatted down and the shuriken clinked as it fell down. One of his hands hovered over it, moving up and down slightly. After just about 4 seconds, the shuriken started moving, too, and slowly Naruto straightened, shuriken once again attached to his hand 1 inch away. Well done, Naruto-kun, but how did you practice it? You aren't allowed to use shuriken in the academy yet. Wooden shuriken won't help much, Sarutobi pondered out loud. Yeah, I didn't have any shuriken. So, I just used pebbles and small rocks. Ingenious, right? Naruto gave a smug smile, showing off the results of his reading. Ingenious? Hiruzen asked, and Naruto's smile widened. Sure, it is. You are learning fast, Naruto-kun. Keep it up. Anything else you wanna see? Naruto asked smugly, yet impatiently. Well, you can show me tree walking, Sarutobi said, knowing what the blonde was getting at. Naruto grinned and turned sideways to face the wall of the Hokage office. There was an excited jump in his demeanor. He stood there, concentrating to mold his chakra, his hands forming the ram seal. It took him almost 10 seconds before his eyes opened and he ran towards the wall. In moments he was standing from the ceiling, grinning like a madman. Sarutobi supposed it was impressive, and enough, that it took him only 10 seconds to do that. This was, after all, an exercise he was supposed to do after 4 more years, when he would become a genin. Looks like you really did master all those exercises I gave you. I guess only the transformation jutsu is left now, Hiruzen said after Naruto flipped down from the ceiling and landed in a crouch. He straightened and made the hand sign for the jutsu. Oh, that. I had it mastered long before, Gigi. He then hesitated, but before Hiruzen could think of it and frown, Naruto resolved himself in a mischievous smile. That smile came to his face. Poor Hiruzen, not having been at the butt of the blonde's pranks enough times, didn't give it a second thought. But his personal Anbu who were hidden around the office had all at some point of time been given the bodyguard duty over the said blonde, and they all felt a shiver run down their spines and thanked whatever deity they knew that they weren't down there in front of the brat. Naruto released the molded chakra and a poof was heard in a cloud of smoke covered Naruto. Hiruzen, who had expected a copy of himself or just some made-up image, felt a drop of blood trickle down his nose when the smoke slowly cleared. 2 sunny blonde pigtails were the first thing he saw, followed by long, smooth, creamy legs. Some of the smoke dissipated some more and a small, creamy waist filled his vision. As more and more smoke cleared, blood rushed faster out of his nose. A big, full, a bushy patch of blonde hiding Lady Jane with little help from those heavy thighs pressing together, 2 big, soft, fleshy mounds being futilely covered by petite arms, a small, cutest pout on the pink, plump lips, long, blonde eyelashes lidding blue sparkling eyes that looked so innocent. Blood spurted of his nose and the third Hokage was knocked out within 4 seconds. All the hidden Anbu silently wiped their noses and upper lips, conflicted if they should be relieved or disappointed that they didn't get the full view of the transformation. Sarutobi had no idea how long he was passed out, but when he came to, Naruto was still rolling on the ground, laughing so hard that only wheezes were coming out of his mouth. He deftly cleaned the blood from his burning face and cleared his throat to regain some of his dignity. It only made Naruto laugh even harder. Naruto kept laughing for a few minutes and Sarutobi couldn't help the small smile that forced itself on his lips. Naruto's emotions are so contagious. When he finally quieted down and climbed on his feet, still snickering sporadically, Hiruzen voiced what was on his mind since the moment he gained consciousness, even though he wasn't sure if he wanted to know. Naruto-kun, how did you refine your jutsu so much? Because it wasn't that hard to figure out how he invented it. Oh, it was easy, and he knew that he really didn't want to know. It can never be easy, even for 8-year-olds. Never mind, it's fine. Let's not go on other. I suppose that's good enough, Sarutobi said with a small grin despite himself, teasing the blonde who was clearly expecting something along the likes of a grand celebration, or maybe just a small big ramen date, who knows, for his accomplishments. Congratulations, I grant you the permission to start practicing seals, Naruto-kun. Naruto jumped in his place in excitement. For real, Gigi? Sarutobi laughed at Naruto's cheerfulness. Yes, your chakra control is satisfactory now. As long as he doesn't try to make more complex seals, but it would take him at least 8 more years to even start trying them, right? Naruto, oblivious to the Hokages, jitters jumped in the air and did a victory dance, practically overflowing with exhilaration. The old man sat there with a light-hearted smile on his face, basking in Naruto's contagious feelings till he stopped dancing. When he finally came down from his high, he scratched his head and sheepishly admitted, Yeah, I just remembered. That's why I came to you today. I wanted to ask you how am I supposed to even start learning them, you know? Hiruzen's face blanked. He didn't read the theory of the seals already. What do you mean, Naruto-kun? Didn't you study the books about seals in the library? Naruto's face cleared as if he just remembered that. Oh, I totally forgot you told me to read those books, too. But where can I find them? Huh? In the library. I mean, there are so many rows and shelves, and how will I find one or two books on seals? You know, it took me more than 2 hours to find the book on Uzumaki clan. 2 hours. And there was only one there. I mean, yeah, I get that they were not from our village, but still. Anyways, I don't know how to find a book on seals. I only managed to find that one book on Uzumaki clan cause the shelf was marked with ninja clans. So, it took Hiruzen a few more seconds to understand what Naruto was trying to ask for after his rambling. You mean the sections in the library? Naruto nodded, so he continued, you will find books on seals in the arts section. On the shelf marked with Fuinjutsu. And don't worry, there won't be just one or two books on seals there. The third Hokage gave a smile at his last sentence that Naruto would almost call wicked if he didn't know better. Okay, I will remember that. Thanks, Gigi, Naruto said with a glazed look, trying to make sure he wouldn't forget the categories. Oh, and Naruto-kun. Hiruzen's voice snapped him out of his musings. Yeah, I think it would be helpful if you try calligraphy, too, before you start drawing seals. They require great penmanship. Calligraphy. Is that necessary? Naruto whined. Not necessary, per se, but you will find it a lot harder to draw seals with your chicken scratch, Sarutobi said with a chuckle at the end. Hey, it's not chicken scratch, you know, Naruto argued, ready to throw a temper tantrum, all with hands folded and chin high in the air and a scowl pout on the face. Alright, Sarutobi conceded with a small laugh. But I still suggest practicing calligraphy. You can find them in the arts section, too. Okay, I'll try, Naruto accepted with a huff. Sarutobi laughed at the blonde's near sulking expression. How about I treat you to some ramen after I get my work done for the day? You did well these last couple of months, he offered as a reward for Naruto's training, for reducing his paperwork by letting up on pranks for those few months. Naruto yelled out aloud, yes. Ramen. And did a small victory dance again. Then I'll see you at Ichiraku's later, Gigi. Bye. And with that, the yellow ball of energy vanished just as soon as he came. It suddenly felt like the temperature around him dropped by half a degree, but Hiruzen's smile didn't falter. Naruto went for the library the moment he was out of Hokage Tower. He stopped near an alley few meters away from the building and did his transformation before entering the library and walking past the librarian's desk. It was like a ritual for him to transformation before entering the old hag's range of vision. It didn't take him more than 5 minutes to find the shelf marked Arts, Kekkei Ninjutsu and Arts, Fuinjutsu. The first 1/3 of the shelf was filled with barrier techniques. The rest had books on seals. Naruto just stood there blankly for several minutes. There were more than a couple hundred books, and not small or thin ones either. Now he knew the old man's smile really was wicked. Guess it's better than just one. Just for the sake of curiosity escapade, he retracked to find the shelf for calligraphy. There were 2 whole aisles full of it. He obediently went back to the seals. It took him an hour to realize there were a few introductory books, then there was a series of guidebooks, all the way from level 1 seals to level 7 seals, and another series up to 9 levels, and many other such series with different number of levels. Then there were some books on notable seals used since the Warring States era. There were other solo books, too. There was one largest series, up to 15 levels, and all of them were some of the thickest books in the shelf. They were a bit battered and yellowed. But they all had one thing different than all the other series available: they had the Uzumaki clan symbol at the bottom of their spines. Naruto knew they were the ones he would be studying from. 15 was a much more appealing number than 100, anyways. And he knew these 15 books had more about seals in them than all the other books together. Fortunately, the first 2 volumes were of calligraphy, not complete courses, just enough to learn to draw seals. It seemed as if bibliophobia was a common trait among the Uzumakis, ironic considering most of them were supposed to be seal masters. Even then, there were 15 of the thickest books on seals by the Uzumaki clan. It was scary to think how many they would have made if even half of them actually liked reading and studying. Naruto decided to start from volume 3. He would practice calligraphy when he would get sick of reading, cause there was a lot of reading to do. Thankfully, they were written in ways quite easy to understand, but it was still a great pain to learn everything in them. There were almost 70 different basic symbols that were used for drawing seals and their fundamentals. Then there were over thousands of their combinations and their functions. But if you really understood the basic symbols and their fundamentals, you won't have to bother about learning about the combinations and their functions, you can just derive them. It took Naruto 15 weeks to complete Volume 3 and 1/4 of Volume 1, and by the end he was proficient in at least 60 symbols and their combinations. He would cross-check combinations from the books after deriving them. He doesn't think he can remain sane if he even tried to learn all of them. He didn't even try. Then he pulled out Volume 4. This one was all about how and which of the symbols and their combinations you can put together in an array to get certain results, and which ones you should avoid putting together, and which ones you should absolutely not put together. There wasn't as much weight on the latter as there should be, maybe because they knew any other Uzumaki would try them regardless, and any non-Uzumaki would listen with just one warning. It was more practical to decrease word count and useless effort. Naruto wouldn't realize it anytime soon, but there were 2 such arrays already on his body, one over another. See what I said about useless effort? He completed Volume 4 in next 12 weeks, though most of that time was spent on practicing basics and fundamentals and practicing calligraphy. Volume 1 was almost done. Naruto felt it was much easier to complete because he had spent most of his time mastering the basics. So, he already had a good understanding of how to put them together to form arrays. Volume 4 just confirmed most of his theories. Volume 5 finally started on drawing and practicing seals. Draw the most compact and clear you can. Release the least amount of chakra it requires to work the seal. This volume started on small storage seals and finished on weak explosive seals. Maybe they knew an Uzumaki would still find a way to make it hazardous. Naruto managed to break all of his windows in his house the first time he practiced a really weak, at least he thought so, explosive seal. He then vowed never to test them inside the apartment. The neighbors were already grumpy enough without any explosions. 14 weeks later he had completed half of Volume 2 and started Volume 6, the largest volume after Volume 13. Naruto was almost afraid of those 2 monsters of books. Volume 6 had bigger and more durable storage seals, more powerful explosive tags, triggers, time, weight, heat, water, pressure, surroundings, chakra signature, specific materials and many others, and modifications, making them smaller, bigger, using different inks, drawing on different surfaces, repeated releases, limiting the effects, limiting to certain areas and other things. It took him next 6 weeks to finish Volume 2 and 34 more to do Volume 6. There was a lot of hands-on experience, pranks, for this one. By the end, he was practically in love with timed seals and repeated releases, even though his current limit was just 10 minutes and 6 repeats. It was so great for his pranks. For the first 5 months, he never once got caught. But inevitably, the police did catch on his increasing mastery of seals. And he couldn't do a thing. His seals were glaring evidence against him. Even refusing the notion that he made those seals was rebuffed. There were less than few seal users in Konoha, none except him interested in pranks. Their criminal records were negligible in front of Naruto's, despite all of them being at least thrice his age. This led him to his next obstacle. Invisible seals. He has to find some way to make his seal invisible or he won't be able to prank anymore without being caught, at least using seals. He can still go the traditional ways. But where's the fun in that when you can use seals? There was one modification in Volume 6 for that. It had the instructions to camouflage your seal so it looks invisible. But that's not what he needed. Those seals were visible once they were released. It wasn't what he wanted. His seals were rarely discovered before it's too late. He needed to make them invisible after they were released. He used all his free time trying to come up with an idea. He had an awesome prank to set if he could just figure out how to make his seals one-time use. Because if he got caught for this one, he is really gonna get it from the police this time. But he didn't get much ideas for that until months later. During that first 1.5 years since Naruto started studying seals, Iruka-sensei had his fair share of moments, too. Some days Naruto would come to school just to sleep all day, and while that itself was a very frequent occurrence, now those days concerned Iruka. Normally, Naruto would sleep because he was bored. Hardly ever would he sleep like he had not slept in days. Those days were always followed by some big prank. But that year, Naruto would sleep like that every 3 days. Of course, there were no large-scale pranks every 3 days. Some days Naruto's answers would be written so beautifully that Iruka would have to squint his eyes to even read them, even if his name was always written in the same chicken scratch as always. At the beginning, Iruka thought Naruto had someone else do it for him. But the kid didn't have any friends, and he couldn't, either, have made anyone do it for him. His thoughts were confirmed when he saw Naruto write in that handwriting one day in class. He was concentrating acutely on his work. But it was only sporadic, most of his work was still submitted in chicken scratch. Iruka often wondered why. Then there were days when he was in his own world, scribbling illegible things on a paper, but thinking something else. Those days he would not even sass Sasuke. Then there were some pranks which everyone knew who did but no one knew how he did. Like the time desks would suddenly vanish for a second and then reappear. Or when green paint suddenly rained in the corridor. Or when there were sudden explosions in different rooms minutes after lunch break when Naruto was innocently sitting right in front of him. Even the pranks were more irregular than ever. Sometimes there won't be a prank for a whole month, even the smallest one, and sometimes there would be more than 10 in a single month. Iruka learned a little too late that he was studying seals. And suddenly everything started making sense. He also stopped waking him up during classes, well, half the times at least. He was, after all, still learning something and still had to learn other things too. When Naruto finally started on Volume 7, he finally got the idea he was searching for, 3 weeks after he started the book. This book was about diversionary seals and concealment seals. How to make the seal with multiple functions. How to make them look like another seal. How to overlap seals but still make only one of them work. How to use seals as decoys. How to conceal your smell. How to hide your chakra. How to hide someone else's chakra. And all kinds of tricks to mask the seal and what it is supposed to do. It gave Naruto the inspiration he was looking for. He completed Volume 7 in 29 weeks. The seals he learned from them weren't used much in his pranks. He used them very rarely, and only on school kids. He wouldn't want to attract attention to those seals before he could use them for his legendary prank. He started Volume 8. It had barriers, and these were the toughest seals he had studied yet. Nevertheless, he knew these would be some of more useful seals for him in the future. It astonished him that there would be so many types of barriers, and each one completely different from others. And he knew these were only the most basic of barriers. You have to give your seals your own personal touch to make them better. It goes even more for barriers. But a couple weeks into Volume 8, by when he had barely scratched the idea of barriers, his attention was caught by his best prank ever. And so, he started spending more of his time planning for his one legendary prank, one which he was sure would be remembered for years to come. And the best thing would be, there won't be a single smallest thing to trace it back to him. It was during this prank when he was once again hiding in his favorite hideout number 3, that he noticed something he had never before did. There was a pattern on the ceiling. It was a seal. Naruto was nowhere near being the master of seals yet, but he could still tell at least a couple things about a seal by looking at it. This one was related to vision. Maybe that's the reason the police can never find him in there. He copied the seal in a much smaller scale for personal reference. So, it took him 7 more months to complete Volume 8. By the time he had reached the end of the book, he was already 11 years old. Reaching his last year in academy in a few months. It was time to finally start looking at what the hell he was being taught in the school. She woke up abruptly and knew it was earlier than when she normally woke up. Changing positions, she tried to sleep again but gave up after few minutes of failed tries. Finally opening her eyes, she looked out of her window and calculated it was sometime before 5 o'clock. She had at least an hour to herself before she would have to start her day. She laid there on the bed, thinking of why she was feeling weird today. This strange feeling that won't let her sleep just one more hour. She knew it was because it was her first day at school, first day she would meet others kids her own age that weren't neji. She would see how normal kids interacted with each other, kids who don't have heavy expectations on them. She would learn things that all the other children were taught. She would learn something other than her clan's technique, something new, something ordinary. Perhaps she would talk to other kids. Perhaps they would talk to her. Perhaps they would want to become her friends. Perhaps one of them would become her friend. Perhaps he would be there too. She shouldn't have such thoughts. Such silly and childish thoughts. Her father would be disappointed if he heard her thoughts. She shouldn't concern herself with pointless fancies of friends. She is the heir of her clan. She should not think of such things, they were beneath her. She should focus on her goal of getting stronger and bringing her clan to new heights. Friends won't do that. She just has to graduate the academy in 1 year with good grades that would make her father proud. Yeah, make her father proud. That's her goal. Focus on it. These thoughts won't make her father proud, victories and success will. She suppressed her thoughts about the school and the strange feeling she vaguely ascertained, but refused to acknowledge, was excitement. She got up from her bed and then made up her bed. Looking out from the window, she saw that she still easily had 3/4 of an hour before her presence would be expected for the morning training. She took out a scissor from the drawer, grabbed some books and papers and submitted on her desk. She pulled out a few flowers from her vase, which she fills with new flowers twice a week, and drowned in her favorite pastime of flower pressing. She stood outside the staff room, waiting for her teacher, Iruka-sensei. Despite her best efforts not to, she still thought about other kids that would be in her class. Would she know any of them? Of course not. She was rarely out of the clan compound. And never without guards. Even today she was escorted by Ko to the school. She already seemed so superior and standoffish to everyone, she couldn't fathom any sense of normalcy, at least by other kids' standards, because this was her normal, in her 1 year of academy. And what was worst was that she had to be like that the whole year. She wasn't allowed to engage in any childish fantasy. She was the heir of one of the oldest ninja clans and one of the founding families of the village. She cannot, would not, lower herself to the standards of commoners. Uruka-sensei came out of the room then. I apologize for the delay, Hinata-sama. I got what I needed. We should go to the class and get you settled there. Follow me. He led the way to his class, with Hinata keeping up a foot behind him. He finally stopped at a door and slid it open. Loud noises of many kids chattering and assaulting Hinata's ears. A paper shuriken flew over Uruka-sensei's head and fell down after bumping into the wall at the other side of the corridor. The voices quieted down slowly when the kids got aware of their sensei's presence one by one. He entered the classroom and Hinata followed. Good morning, students. I see most of you are here. Uruka-sensei turned his head and mumbled something under his breath. We have a new student joining your class today. I hope everyone will get along with her nicely. Uruka-sensei gestured Hinata to come forth and introduce herself. Hinata took a few steps forward and bowed. My name is Hinata Hyuga. I hope we all enjoy each other's company for the year. Alright, you can take a seat now, Hinata, Uruka-sensei said and pointed to some vacant seats in the back of the class. Hinata took the one by the window. Her class was full of kids from different clans of the village. She could recognize some of them by descriptions. There was a Nara, a Yamanaka, an Akamichi, an Inuzuka, an Aburame and an Uchiha. At least she recognized most of the clan kids, even if she wouldn't know them. Uruka-sensei started his lecture, recapping the history he taught in previous year. Hinata sat attentively but was not really listening much. She had learned all of Konoha's before in her home tuitions. But 5 or something minutes into the lesson he stopped and released a deep breath, like he just realized something that should have surprised him but didn't. He folded his hands and waited impatiently. For what? She reached out her senses and could suddenly feel someone running in the corridor. Is that who Uruka-sensei is waiting for? She looked around but the other students don't look the least bit perturbed. A few of them even breathed out the same way that sensei just did, like this was a usual occurrence. She turned her head back to the window but kept one eye in the class. Seconds later the door slid open and a blond boy entered the room at the same moment. Uruka-sensei said in a very irritated voice, Naruto. Hinata's head snapped to the door before Uruka-sensei's voice reached her ears. She was sure she would have smiled had her training on impassive face been the least bit less intense. Uruka-sensei. Good morning, Naruto said, chuckling nervously and scratching his head. This is the first day of the year, Naruto. The first day. Uruka-sensei scolded him. But he wasn't cold or harsh. It looked as if he was scolding him just for the sake of scolding. Heh. Sorry sensei. I was up till late yesterday, you know, Naruto told him apologetically. And how many times have I told you to go to bed on time, Naruto? Naruto didn't answer. Don't overwork yourself, Naruto. You are just 11, you have lots of time. Hinata heard someone, a few someones, in front of her snort. Don't worry, Uruka-sensei. I'm 11, I can take care of myself, Naruto said confidently. Yes, he can. You don't get an apprehend on sight order and still manage to have no jail records on your name just like that. This will not happen again, understood Naruto? Uruka-sensei said sternly. Naruto opened his mouth. No doubt, to argue, but sensei added, at least this month. What? Naruto whined. Come on, the whole month. You know I can't do that. Is this really happening? Then try. Iruka-sensei retorted and continued before Naruto can start yapping again, go take your seat. Just for the record, you are going to give everyone a good old recap of our history I taught you last year. Fine. Naruto drawled out and turned to take his seat, beside the Uchiha. That was the only seat vacant except the few beside hers. Naruto moved towards the seat beside Uchiha, guessed that one's his, and looked around at other kids and saw her. He stopped in his tracks, huh? Then a wide grin came on his face and he waved his hand at her and yelled, "Oh, hey, princess." The whole class snapped their head at them, horrified at his actions towards her, like had just committed some unspeakable sin. Hinata nodded her head at him, Uzumaki-san. All the heads snapped at hers, this time shocked. Well, what were they thinking would happen? She wouldn't kill him just because he called her something other than Hinata-sama. Honestly, it was refreshing. Naruto looked like he was oblivious to everyone around him and ran towards her. Whatcha doing here? I thought you wouldn't join the academy, you know. Hinata didn't respond. What was she supposed to say? Are you here just for this year? Naruto continued on and took the seat beside her. Hinata nodded lightly. Great. You are gonna love this year, princess, 'cause you have me in your class, Naruto chuckled. Hey, you remember what you asked me the last time we met? Is he always this excited? Yes, she remembers. She asked him if he was a descendant of Uzumaki clan. Yes, that. So, the answer is yes. Hinata heard a few girly gasps. Yeah, I went to Old Man Third and he told me that. Man, I was so happy. I never knew, you know. I didn't even get to say thanks to you. But how did you know about that anyways? I mean, Gigi didn't tell even me, so it's gotta be something pretty secret, Naruto rambled on. Hinata did not respond, again. She knew about most of the clans that had ever associated with the village. She was taught all that years ago. But was he being so uncharacteristically vague on purpose? If it really is a secret, why is he telling her about it? Why is that even a secret? Naruto waited a second, but when she didn't say anything, he continued his rambling, never mind. But it helped me great, you know. I'm so gonna become the greatest seal master. And then I'll become the Hokage. Great. Huh. Hinata fought the urge to smile. Seal master. Konoha didn't have many seal masters. Well, actually no village had many seal masters. It would be nice if he actually does become a seal master. Naruto grinned that same foxy grin like that day. He straightened like he just remembered something. Hey, princess, are you gonna sit here every day? Maybe. She shrugged. Will he sit beside her every day, too? Alright, he nodded sagely, as if thinking of something of utmost importance. I'll manage. Manage what? Hinata raised her eyebrows, but he ignored her query. Hey. Ahem. Naruto, I think you should come back to your seat, now, Iruka-sensei said. He's finally out of his stupor. Hinata looked around. Other kids were, too. But they were still gaping as if they couldn't believe what they were seeing, listening. Is this really so weird? Then she remembered how she thought he was weird the second time they talked. Maybe this is weird. Ah, I'm sitting here, Iruka-sensei. This seat is free, right? Naruto said. No. Iruka-sensei snapped. But why? Naruto cried. Because you will just talk the whole time and disturb the class. Sensei reasoned at once. I won't. Naruto shouted. Yes, you will, Naruto. We are not having this discussion, Iruka-sensei said in final tone. And I am not sitting anywhere else, Iruka-sensei, Naruto argued stubbornly. They had a stare-off for a few seconds and Iruka-sensei did not waver. Please, sensei. I swear I won't disturb the class, you know, Naruto whined. Iruka-sensei didn't buy that for a second. I'll even show you that jutsu again. Naruto said. That jutsu, in a weirdly feminine voice. Hinata thought someone snorted, again. Light pink dusted Sensei's cheeks and he sputtered out, and no, you won't. Naruto smirked and raised a brow, but his words still came out as an innocent whine, please, Sensei. Just give me one chance. Iruka Sensei looked at Naruto's face for a second, then sighed audibly, fine. But one disruption, just one, and you are at the front. Understood, Naruto. Yeah, I hear ya, Sensei, Naruto answered happily. Iruka Sensei sighed again, like he was already regretting his decision, and made his way to the front of the class. He started his recap of last year again, seemingly forgetting that Naruto was supposed to that. Naruto turned towards Hinata, and looked like he was about to say something, but thought better of it and just smiled at her. She, of course, didn't smile back, just turned towards Sensei. Lunch break came soon and all the kids disappeared within moments of the bell ringing. Most of the kids ran outside to play and others sat under trees to eat their lunches. Hinata picked up her own lunch and went outside, too. She found an unoccupied place under a tree and sat down to eat her lunch. She thought about joining other girls but quickly expelled such unbecoming thoughts from her mind. Quietly she ate her lunch and observed other kids having fun. Most of the boys were running around or fighting and most of the girls were talking and giggling. Hinata felt out of place among them. She felt like an adult watching over little kids. Looking around, she saw some movement near the windows of her class and she turned her attention there. After a few seconds, she saw something yellow for just a second and then it was gone again. It reminded her of her new seat partner. That is, if he even is her seat partner, his seat is beside Uchiha, really. Naruto was, surprisingly, quiet the whole time during the class. The whole time he was absorbed in something he was doing on his desk. It looked like he was scribbling something on a small piece of paper. He looked so lost in his work that she doubted he was even vaguely aware of his surroundings. Only one time, minutes before the bell signaling lunch break rang, did Naruto look like he was going to say something. But he didn't. She also noticed some kids looking back at him a couple of times confusedly. She didn't know, but they were also surprised at the blonde's silence. It was very rare that Naruto would sit silently for the whole time, and given his non-stop rambling in the morning when he first saw the heiress, no one believed that he would have kept quiet for more than a few minutes, let alone for 4 hours straight. If they were any older, they would have organized a betting pool on that, and everyone except Shikamaru would have lost. Hinata didn't see anything else in the classroom, so she went back to looking at the kids. She didn't remember the time when she was allowed to act like that anymore. Half an hour passed by like that and the bell rang, signaling that lunch break was over. All the kids went inside sluggishly and unwillingly, in a great contrast to how they ran out before, and Hinata followed them. Everyone took their seats and waited for Sensei to come. When Hinata got to her window-side desk, she saw a small piece of paper on her chair. She picked it up and noticed something was written on the other side. Don't sit anywhere else. She frowned and looked at the empty seat beside her. Nonetheless, she took the same seat and a few moments later a white-haired man entered the class. He introduced himself as Mizuki-sensei and started revising about the 100 shinobi rules. Naruto still wasn't back in the class, but no one seemed to bother. He was at Rule #08. A shinobi must follow their commander's instructions, when a water balloon fell on him. Being a chunin, he quickly sidestepped but one of his forearms still got splashed with water. As one, everyone looked above at the ceiling but there was nothing to see, it looked like any other ordinary ceiling. But then another balloon fell down followed by another and another. Within moments everyone in the class was being assaulted by water balloons, some filled with water, some with colored water and a few with paint. Some of them were dodged but most of them still found a target to wet. By the time it was over, after 6 minutes, all the students were soaked with water and paint. Even Mizuki-sensei was splashed here and there. It took them a few minutes to pull themselves together and give the now colorful classroom a once-over. Mizuki-sensei yelled out a very pissed off, Uzumaki. Even though he is nowhere near the academy. Then they noticed that Hinata was the only one in the classroom without a drop of liquid on her. Being more focused on dodging the balloon themselves, no one had any idea of the condition of anyone else. Hinata was the only one who had the barest idea about how she was spared. She had seen a number of balloons come at her too, and she was very much prepared to dodge them, but they never reached her. She watched dumbly as each and every balloon aimed at her vanished when it came within 1 foot of her. No matter from which direction they came from, they just disappeared 1 foot from her. Like there was a wall there. Hinata tried to feel if anything was there but her hands only felt air. No one else noticed it. Students assumed that Naruto had enough brain cells to know where to draw a line. Mizuki-sensei assumed Hinata knew the rotation, it wouldn't need much power to avoid the balloons and he sensed some chakra from her direction, anyway. And everyone knew it was Naruto who did it, no questions asked. Even if no one had seen him since the lunch break started. Even if there wasn't a trace of him anywhere in the classroom, or on the ceiling. Hinata was once again reminded that there was a reason that he had an apprehend on sight order on him. She decided she would heed the warning in the note and wouldn't change her seat if she got the chance to. It didn't take her very long to see that reason and appreciate the warning. The rest of the year went by pretty normally, if Hinata's first day in academy was setting any bar. There were Iruka-sensei's lessons, which she half paid attention to. Mizuki-sensei's lessons, which she started turning deaf ear to. The man's special treatment to her was horribly obvious and irritating. Taijutsu lessons, which she aced every time. Target practice, in which she was tied with Uchiha. Ninjutsu training, which she had to start from scratch because she wasn't trained in anything other than her family ninjutsu. Quizzes and tests, which she breezed through. She got to know other kids, too. Sasuke Uchiha, Kiba Inuzuka, Shino Aburame, Shikamaru Nara, Choji Akamichi, Ino Yamanaka. Ino introduced her to her friend Sakura Haruno. They were both very loud, especially when they were talking about, or talking to, or watching, or gushing over, or thinking about, or daydreaming about, or fighting over, or practically doing anything remotely related to Sasuke Uchiha. Hinata had talked to all of them occasionally. Enough that she could call them acquaintances but nothing more. Naruto came to school barely more than half the times. She got the impression that it was still better than the past years. Even then he slept through a third of the classes he did attend. Sometimes he sat with her, sometimes with Uchiha. Though, he was sent back to his original seat beside Uchiha most of the times he sat beside her because he just can't shut his mouth. There were pranks at least once a month, at most 4 times a month. Hinata noticed that 4 or so months after she joined the academy, the pranks started including ninjutsu elements, wind, water, fire, lightning, earth. They didn't get to her most of the time, and when they did, she was almost always able to dodge whatever it was. Hinata would have felt like he was showing her that she would be at his mercy were those pranks even remotely harmful, if it was anyone other than Naruto. He still fell short in taijutsu, clone jutsu and flunked pretty much every test or quiz. Though he was decent in target practice and substitution jutsu and excellent in transformation jutsu. In just 2 months, Hinata was perplexed at how someone unable to master the most basic jutsus and the dead last of the class can set up such mind-boggling pranks and play the Hyuga police for years like they were mere inconveniences. She saw it herself when one day he was sitting beside her in the class, chatting quietly, hiding his mouth behind a book he had stood on his desk. Hinata would never admit to anyone that her focus was more on his useless chatter than Mizuki-sensei's lesson, when a squad from the Hyuga police came in to arrest Naruto. They asked him if he knew about the disappearance of half a quintal of gunpowder from a shop in the Uchiha district. He innocently denied. They asked him a few more questions and he answered all of them before they pulled out an arrest warrant. She saw him frown before he got up and asked to see the warrant. To her surprise, instead of complying, he said something. Neither she nor any other student heard it, but the police squad certainly did, and handed the warrant back to them.